Good evening. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. The tension between Turkey and Germany mounts as German Chancellor Angela Merkel signals that the customs union between Turkey and the EU may not be updated.
Ankara has had tense relations with Berlin for a while. While the tension is mostly marked by its political aspects, Berlin eventually played its economy card upon which Ankara has long been counting. On Wednesday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel made important remarks on the customs union. We are not opening new chapters in Turkey's EU accession bid, and we have lowered membership preparation aid to a minimum. Also, for the time being, the customs union deal with Turkey will not be changed or updated, Merkel said when asked about ties with Turkey during a live interview on YouTube. The customs union between Turkey and the bloc entered into force in December 1995. The agreement covers all industrial goods but does not address unprocessed agricultural products, services or public procurement right now. At the end of 2016, the European Commission had asked the European Council for a mandate to launch talks with Turkey to renew the existing EU-Turkey customs union. The upgrade of the agreement forms a central part of efforts to deepen relations in key areas of joint interest identified at the EU-Turkey summit of November 2015. Merkel also underlined that the relations between Turkey and Germany are going through a difficult period. Her remarks on the customs union came one day after German Foreign Minister Sigmund Gabriel suggested that economic pressure on Turkey is working. In the same statement, our relations are going through a tough period, but we should continue dialogue, Merkel also said. Ankara voiced its concerns over Merkel's remarks. It is not right for an EU member country to behave like it is instructing EU institutions, presidential spokesman Ibrahim Kalın told reporters on Tuesday. The customs union agreement is built on a win-win principle. We are talking about a relationship that is based on the mutual benefit of both Turkey and European countries. When it is precluded, postponed or cancelled, then all European countries will be harmed, not just Turkey, Kalın said. Turkey's EU Minister Ömer Çelik also criticized Merkel, describing her comments as unfortunate. Çelik also warned that a bilateral dispute between Germany and Turkey would become a wider problem for Ankara and Brussels.
Joining us live via Skype tonight is Alper Kaliber, who is an associate professor of international relations at Altınbaş University. Good evening, Mr. Kaliber.
Good evening.
So as you know, President Erdogan told Turks living in Germany not to vote for, I quote, Turkey's enemies. And following this call in a TV program earlier today, Germany's Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel said that, I quote, this is an unprecedented act of interference in the sovereignty of our country. So for starters, what can you tell us about the meaning of this war of words between the two countries' officials?
Yeah, it seems that the tension is climbing up in the relations between Turkey and Germany, and particularly the government officials exchange a very inflammatory rhetoric now. So I should say that President Erdogan's words are perceived as sort of interference to domestic affairs of Germany. I think these were, a bit sort of unfortunate intervention from Turkey, especially in such a stage of worsening relations. But we should also maybe remind our audience that particularly in recent years, the discourses on foreign policy have turned out to be a sort of integral part of country's domestic political struggles. For instance, just 2 days ago, this time German Chancellor Merkel, while refusing the end of accession talks with Turkey, she basically said that we shouldn't forget nearly 50% of Turkish citizens who did not vote for Erdogan and his party and his campaign in referendum. So this means that, in fact, these sort of discourses that could be perceived as intervention to domestic affairs is not just coming from one country. I mean, it's sort of two-way around. But of course, today's declarations are maybe more direct, so to speak, at least it could be perceived in that way, more direct intervention to German elections. And certainly it wouldn't help more the two countries to just overcome this crisis and to sort of again put all the things in order.
German Chancellor Merkel's remarks were important as they underlined that this ongoing crisis may have economic ramifications as well as political ones. So I'd like to ask you, is this crisis likely to hurt the future of Turkey's economic relations with Germany? What do you think?
I think maybe for such a speculation, it may be a bit early, because I mean, when we look at the history of Turkish, German, and Turkish EU economic relations, there is a sort of a constructed stability there. I mean, if you also look at the period where AKP has been in power, you could easily see that Germany in particular, but the EU countries in general, are the most important the trade partner of Turkey. For instance, and there is also a sort of, from 2010, there is a sort of stable increase in Turkey-EU/Turkey-German trade relations. For instance, regarding export and import, EU is the first or biggest partner of Turkey. And in EU's export and import, Turkey again ranks like 5th or 7th. So this means that the economic ties are so important, and these ties cannot be endangered just through some daily exchanges or daily, so to speak, political fight between countries. Of course, these create certain environment, certain negative environment in which Turkish and German businessmen and firms, companies are operating. But I don't expect, I mean, of course, if this crisis remains at this level, I don't expect an important or dramatic decrease in Turkey-EU, Turkey-German trade relations. But on the other hand, we should also, or we also need to consider the fact that customs union is really an important part of Turkey-EU relations, and it was first shaped with the Ankara agreement, association agreement between Turkey and EU in 1963. Then it was rebuilt, in fact, in 1971 with the additional protocol, and then it has become an integral part of Turkey's EU perspective and also Turkey's possible or potential EU membership. So there was, you know, a 3-stage at the end of which the customs union would gonna operate, and it operated since 1996. But in 2015, both Turkey and EU had agreed that this customs union need to be revised because it was not commensurate with the current global trading situations, not commensurate with Turkey's new developing economic situation, and also with the EU's demand of being a sort of global economic power. But at this current stage, at least in the near future, we shouldn't expect any modernization or revision of customs union, because it was mostly Turkey who was demanding the revision of its framework and also the expansion of the scope of customs union. Customs union, when it was operational in 1996 for the first time, was covering only industrial manufactured goods, but Turkey demanded to expand it to agricultural products, services, and to new spheres of economic activities like public procurement. The EU also demanded this, but at the current stage of crisis between Turkey and some particular European countries, and also Turkey and some European institutions, including the EU, the European politicians are of the opinion that revision and modernization or deepening and widening of customs union in that stage could possibly be perceived as a sort of reward to Turkey. But Turkey, as you know, is still under the conditions of state of emergency, and there is, crackdown on opposition. We have different problems regarding the use of democratic rights, fundamental freedoms. So, in such a situation, any reward in economic terms to Turkey would mostly be understood sort of as a U-turn in EU's values and norms, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Kaliber, as you've also explained in the first part of your response very thoroughly, that Germany is a very important trading partner for Turkey. But this ongoing crisis with Germany is also seen, it's regarded as part of Turkey's worsening relationship with the EU in general. So what can you tell us about the importance of Turkey-Germany relations in Turkey's overall relationship with the EU?
I mean, if I speculate that Germany has always been the country with which Turkey has most engaged in Europe, this wouldn't be exaggeration. I mean, Turkey-German relations have some historical ties from the Ottoman Empire periods, in the First World War, especially Turkey and Germany were on the same side. And more importantly, from 1960s on, we have the emergence and development of Turkish diaspora in Turkish and Kurdish diaspora in Germany. So these countries have very important historical and also contemporarily important relations. And on the other hand, especially after Brexit, Germany is today maybe the biggest engine of European integration together with France. So it was main driving force behind the European integration. And throughout Turkey-EU relations, apart from some, very short periods of time, Germany also has been a driving force between Turkey-EU relations. If we leave aside some Christian Democrats, generally German left, Green Social Democrats, more the left-leaning parties, they always supported Turkey's EU relations, and they were supporters of Turkey's democratization reforms in European Parliament. But time to time, they also leveled, these left-leaning German politicians leveled harsh criticisms against Turkey, but they generally did this not to close doors to Turkey, but rather, so to speak, to bring Turkey in line with some EU norms and values. But this was generally misperceived and understood by Turkish politicians. But of course, we should be also careful that German right-wing parties, politicians, they were not helpful for Turkey's EU relations. And, from 2005 onwards, for instance, we know Merkel's declaration encouraging a special partnership between Turkey and EU rather than Turkey's EU full membership. So a crucial part of German political establishment, Christian Democrats, Liberal Democrats, right-wing politicians, they, especially in recent years, never supported a possible Turkey's full membership at the EU. But overall, Germany has always been and still is of historical and contemporary importance for Turkey's relations with Europe, in particular with the EU in general, both in economic, political, and also social and cultural terms.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Kaliber, finally, what's your overall prediction on the future of Turkey-EU and Turkey-Germany relations in light of this ongoing crisis?
Okay, I wouldn't be so optimistic, I think, first of all. Turkey-EU relations is in deep crisis, and this crisis is thickening. Since the failed coup in 2016 in Turkey, I'm always saying this, Turkey is rightfully, generally criticizing European countries as they have not shown so sympathy and empathy. This was very important, very dangerous attack on Turkish democracy, on Turkish political system. And this coup attempt should have been just precluded and harshly, prevented. But of course, this question still needs to be asked. I mean, why Turkey couldn't get so much positive response from EU countries while it is struggling against the coup plotters. Why this is the case? Because today in Europe, from left to right, almost all politicians are of the opinion that the Turkish government officials is using this state of emergency also to crack down on opposition. Several media outlets were closed down. Several peace activists, academics were dismissed, and these people, these media outlets, had nothing to do with the Gülenist coup attempt. So, and every day in Turkey, the space of political maneuver or the space of political participation or the space for expressing your views is narrowing down. Day by day, we are experiencing it. So that's why Turkey is really not getting the enough support and empathy that it demands from European countries. So just to return to your question, maybe in a very short sentence I should say that I don't expect any dramatic amelioration on Turkey's relations with certain Western European countries and institutions. But it seems that Turkey at least maybe for a short period of time gave up its insistence on bringing death penalty back, because this would mean an absolute end for Turkey-EU negotiation process and maybe for Turkey-EU relations in total. But yeah, I'm not expecting any good or any positive development in Turkish-EU agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaliber, for your comments and for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Detained foreign nationals continue straining relations between Turkey and EU member states.
Relations between Turkey and the Western countries remained tense last week because of detained foreign nationals in Turkey. According to Deutsche Welle, German diplomatic sources reported that 2 more German nationals were detained last week in Turkey with charges of insulting the president and engaging in illegal political activities. It's also revealed that another German national, David Bridge, has been in detention since April in a deportation center in the northwestern province of Erzurum. Bridge was planning to travel to Jerusalem for Christian pilgrimage when he was detained on the Turkish-Syrian border. No information was released on the reason of the detention. German officials in Turkey have been trying to gain consular protection for Bridge. German Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel said in Berlin on Wednesday, "We have to protect our citizens and cannot allow German citizens to be imprisoned." Since the failed coup attempt on July 15, 2016, more than 20 German nationals were arrested in Turkey. Turkish-German journalist Deniz Yücel, translator Meşale Tolu, human rights activist Petar Steutner, and 8 other German nationals are still in jail in Turkey, according to German Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Moreover, French President Emmanuel Macron expressed his concerns on Tuesday in a telephone call with President Erdogan over a French journalism student detained in Turkey, the Élysée Palace said. Macron told Erdogan he wanted that his compatriot be able to return to France as soon as possible, according to the statement. Lou Bureau was seized by Turkish border guards on the frontier with Iraq in early August on charges of aiding and supporting terrorist organization after he was found to have photographs and interviews with Kurdish militia fighters among his possessions. France has been trying to gain consular protection. French photojournalist Mathias Depardon was also detained on May 8 in Turkey for disseminating the propaganda of the terrorist organization and was deported in early June.
The Turkish Statistical Institute announced this week that Turkey's unemployment rate has dropped to 10.2%.
Turkey's unemployment rate dropped to 10.2% in May, according to the figures announced by Turkish Statistics Institute on August 15th. This number is lower than the previous months, but higher than the same period in 2016. Turkey's unemployment figure has been on a steady decrease during the first 5 consecutive months of 2017 after hitting a record high level in January. The youth unemployment rate for people aged 15 to 24 was announced as 19.8% with a 2.4-point increase compared to the same period in 2016. The Institute's data shows a hike in the number of jobless people reaching to 3.2 million in May with an increase of 330,000 from the same month last year. Selin Böke, professor of economics and CHP deputy, commented on the figures for Medyascope.
We now observe that Turkey's unemployment rate has been stuck at two-digit numbers. There is a 1.8 percentage point increase in unemployment numbers compared to the same period of 2016. We now observe that Turkey's unemployment rate has been stuck at two-digit numbers. There is a 1.8 percentage point increase in unemployment numbers compared to the same period of 2016. Around 313,000 people have become unemployed since May last year. There might have been a steady decrease, but unemployment is really high in Turkey. We observe a significant increase in the female youth unemployment. The unemployment rate for female youth aged 15-24 has surged to 25% with a 5% increase. We see that unemployment does not affect everyone equally. Policies of the government has more severe consequences for women, especially young women. The government's blind eye to the needs of young women has been reflected once again in the unemployment figures. There are many young women willing to work, but they cannot find employment opportunities.
Turkish journalist Ali Bayramoğlu evaluated Abdullah Gül's decision to not attend the AKP Congress for Medyascope this week.
Abdullah Gül's decision to not attend the AKP Congress bears a symbolic meaning. Abdullah Gül is one of the prominent figures of this party and movement. When the AKP was founded, it was a movement of collective dissidence. Abdullah Gül is among the prominent figures who have contributed to the shaping of both the ideology and the political agenda of the AKP. If a figure like Gül, who held key positions such as the Minister of the Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister and President, does not attend the Congress, it indicates two important things. First, at the moment, the gap between the AKP's founding years and the AKP of today is so huge that Abdullah Gül feels the necessity to underline this difference. This is the first time that Abdullah Gül gives such an overt signal. This is an obvious and clear signal showing the big discrepancy between the starting point of the AKP 16 years ago and where it has ended up today. Second, I personally think that Abdullah Gül and his entourage, some other founding figures of the AKP, have slowly started to prepare for a new type of political mobilization. I do not solely think but observe that it is happening. They are not sure about how to proceed, they are in a search. They do not want to directly oppose Erdogan or to create divisions inside the AKP, but they are exploring new political adventures. Let's say they intend to initiate a new political adventure.
Iraqi Kurds are going to the ballot box on September 25th to determine whether the region will secede from Iraq.
Approaching the independence referendum of the Iraqi Kurdish region, scheduled to take place on September 25th, disputes over the possible outcomes of the vote are gaining momentum. Meanwhile, there are rising calls from regional and global actors to postpone the vote. Turkey, Iran and Syria, together with Iraq, have a significant amount of Kurdish population and have been long opposing the referendum. The referendum would contribute to instability in the region, Turkey's Deputy Prime Minister and government spokesman Bekir Bozdağ told a news conference in Ankara. Bozda also noted that the decision to go ahead with the vote violates the constitution of Iraq. Similarly, the United States and other Western nations also voiced their concerns over the referendum, stating that it could trigger a fresh conflict with Baghdad and turn into another regional tension. In June, the US State Department had also warned Erbil that the referendum would distract from more urgent priorities such as the defeat of ISIS militants. Yet, the Jerusalem Post reported on Sunday that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told a delegation of US Republican congressmen that he is in favor of an independent Kurdish state in parts of Iraq. The article also noted that a number of senior Iraqi Kurd officials visited Israel over the last several weeks, urging Jerusalem to both support its independence and send a message to Washington to do the same. Despite the continuous calls from Baghdad, Turkey and many other regional actors, Erbil so far has refused to postpone the referendum. Yet, a source told Rudan News on Thursday that there is a small chance that the Kurdistan region would agree to postpone the referendum until after the Iraqi elections if Baghdad gives guarantee to go ahead for the referendum at a later date.
The Eid al-Adha holiday is extended to last for a total of 10 days.
Government spokesman Bekir Bozda announced this week that the Feast of the Sacrifice holiday was extended 10 days, according to the decision of the Council of Ministers. Salaries of retirees, widowers, and war veterans are going to be paid early. Bozda also explained that bridges and highways run by the General Directorate of Highways are going to be free between August 13th and September 5th. According to experts, the decision was taken to boost local tourism. According to the former Minister of Culture and Tourism Bahattin Yücel, the decision will be useful for tourism. Tourism professionals are satisfied with the decision. President of Professional Hotel Management Association, Hakan Duran, has said, "The government did something which is demanded and needed by tourism professionals." Osman Ayık, who is the president of Turkish Hoteliers Federation, has said, "It's a very positive decision. We are expecting about 500,000 domestic tourists in coastal regions." While the president of the Aegean Tourist Enterprises and Accommodation Association, Mehmet İşler, said, "We are expecting 1 million domestic tourists, and this will create a mobility of 1 billion liras."
Now let's have a look at what's on in Istanbul next week.
Victor Ruiz will be playing at cafes tonight on the north coast of Istanbul. From the depths of the electronic music scene, finally emerged another true artist, a history maker. Ruiz's songs overflow with emotions. He rearranges his own musical roots as contemporary and futuristic. After many successful Istanbul editions of festivals and world tours, One Colony is now presenting its first ever unique concept, Movement Festival. One of the biggest lineups ever, including Kashmir, Blaster Jacks, bass modulators, Brennan Hart. Fascinating productions, festival activities and many more will be awaiting you at this two-day event, Movement Festival, which will take place at Küçük Çiftlik Park on August 19th and 20th. Unique Istanbul Open Air Film Screening Series continue. This Sunday, Hearthstone will be on screen. Set in an Icelandic town, the movie focuses on two teenagers, Thor and Christian. One will try to win the heart of a girl, while the other one will be discovering the feelings he has towards his best friends, making it the most turbulent summer of their lives. The story of two kids trying to come in terms with their own identities will make your heart melt, even with the cold winters of Iceland set in the background.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. Thanks for tuning in and hope to see you again next Friday at 9 p.m. Goodbye.